Welcome back to the channel. For this video, I'm going to take you along for a day hike that I did in the Blue Hills Reservation, which is just a couple miles south of the city of Boston. The Blue Hills stretches over 7,000 acres and spans parts of 6 different towns. The terrain varies depending on which part of the reservation you visit, from low-lying wetlands to rocky hills and forests. For this hike, I planned a round trip of the entire Skyline Trail, which is a roller coaster of ups and downs over the hills that run from a state highway exit in Canton to an ice skating rink in Quincy. Since I would be carrying all of my water for the day and was hiking solo, I planned a flip-flop round trip hike rather than an end-to-end round trip. By parking and starting at the reservation headquarters in Milton, I could cover the eastern section of the reservation and then head back to the car. This way I could refill on water if needed before covering the western section. All in all, this would be a 15-mile day with close to 3,000 feet in elevation gain. This was my first time hiking the Skyline Trail this way, so I was excited to hike on this particular day. The trails were pretty rough in some parts due to a series of recent storms. Some parts were muddy or flooded out, while others had trees down, presenting minor obstacles to get by. However, that just added to the adventure of the day, and thanks to the hard work of the trail maintainers, these were just temporary challenges for this particular day that I hiked. The Skyline Trail has some steep inclines, occasionally requiring scrambles to ascend and descend the hills, but the payoff that you get on a clear day is worth the effort. For the first part of the day, I got awesome views of the iconic Boston City skyline to the north, and some views of the ocean to the northeast. There were also awesome views of the hills around you, sometimes giving a false sense that you are further from civilization than you actually are. There are definitely reminders of how close you are though, with periodic road crossings that make you feel like you're playing a real-life version of the old-school arcade game Frogger. However, as soon as you cross a busy road, you usually disappear back into the forest and get back to the peace of the day. I had fun trying to video the experience, but the combination of videoing and testing out a new GPS app really did a number on my phone, so I had to periodically charge it up with my small portable battery bank. After I made it to the eastern terminus of the Skyline Trail, I turned and headed back to my starting point at the reservation headquarters, stopping to have lunch along the way. With the largest part of the hike out of the way, I was definitely low on water and starting to feel the effects of all the ups and downs on my right knee. Even though I found enough lost bottles along the trail to refill my water supply, I was happy that I planned the hike the way that I did and was able to grab more bottles of water once I reached my car at the trailhead. I'd be lying if I didn't seriously consider calling it quits there and heading home, but I tend to be stubborn at times and decide to push on to finish the hike and cover the western section of the trail, including the tallest hill in the reservation, known as the Great Blue Hill. As tired as I was by this point, I was definitely concerned with safety, as I was more prone to slips and trips on some of the steep sections of the trail. I always feel like I bite off more than I can chew when I plan hikes in the White Mountains up north, but this was the first time I felt this way in the Blue Hills, which further emphasized the importance of getting into trail shape before taking on a long hike. In my somewhat melodramatic state of suffering, I entertained myself by thinking of a trail name to highlight my near-death experiences on the trail. If you don't know what a trail name is, it's simply a nickname that represents a hiker's identity on the trail. Anyway, I decided that 9 lives fit me perfectly, because I usually feel like it takes that many for me to make it through some of my excursions. As I made it up the Great Blue Hill to the crowded summit, and knew that I still had a couple of hours of hiking left to do before my day was up, I definitely started to slow to a snail's pace, particularly on the downhill sections that affected my knee more. It's an understatement to say that the enthusiasm that I started the day with was absolutely crushed by the end of the day, and I ended up struggling to complete my hike as planned. However, stubbornness prevailed, and I continued on, receiving periodic texts from my wife to make sure that I was still alive and not in need of rescue. The section of the Skyline Trail west of the Great Blue Hill is not a popular section to hike, since it dead ends at the highway with no trailhead parking. Most people skip this part of the trail. If I wasn't testing the GPS and trying to get a sense of overall distance for the entire Skyline Trail, I probably would have skipped it too. There were no good views here, so I was happy to just tag the western terminus and head back as quickly as possible. The most interesting part of this section was a little muddy footprint that I found. Now, I'm not saying it was Sasquatch, but it might have been Sasquatch. Once I got back to the Route 138 crossing, the second climb up the Great Blue Hill was pretty tough and took about a half hour to complete. This is about twice as long as it would normally take me to summit that section, but once I made it over, I started feeling motivated to finish strong, even if my knee had other ideas. Playing it safe, I decided to stick to the very slow pace on the downhills, rather than risk further injury. At the end of the day, I had a fun adventure in the Blue Hills and would recommend the area to anyone near Boston looking for a good day hike. It really is a great place to train for bigger hikes like the White Mountains in New Hampshire. But don't be like me and try to do the 15-mile Skyline round trip after being a couch potato most of the winter. Unless, of course, you want to go through about 9 lives in the process. Thanks for watching the video.